Hey everyone, happy Monday. Sorry, this is all weird. It is another Monday, and for some people, Mondays are for motivation. For other people, it's all about a mindful Monday. But if you're with me here on the Other Side podcast, you know that it's time for our mental health journey. My name is Janelle Villiers, and I am your host of the Other Side podcast. I'm also the author of I Slept with a Married Man. Am I Still a Good Person? Where I explore the mental health journey that one has when they have a lot of shame based thinking. So, thinking things like, I am a failure, I am unlovable, I am not enough. And we explore that and explore how to gain resiliency in that. And so, a lot of times where I find myself having really amazing, deep conversations with people is around this area. And I think one of the things that happens once we start to see our value, we recognize that we are enough, we are lovable, we start to recognize that we haven't been setting really good boundaries. And so that's what I really wanted to focus on today. Get your notebooks out, guys, because we are going to be talking about boundaries. And I want to really focus on a lot of the things that I think people question. So we're going to go through this really, really quickly. I have a lot of lists of things to help us as we go through. But I am really excited because I know this is personally a topic that I've had issues with. So if you've also had issues with boundaries, please go ahead and put a 1 in the chat so I know it's not just me. Put a 1 in the chat if you also have had some issues with boundaries. Thank you. That would be helpful. I'm not alone here. Okay, so let's talk about some of the things that would be helpful as we're all working to get better at this. So, first of all, I wanted to talk about some signs that you may actually have some poor boundaries with yourself. One of them could be that you're overcommitting. When you're overcommitting to others, you're constantly just feeling like you're tired. You have all of these engagements that you're going to, but you don't really have time for yourself. This could be a sign that you are having poor boundaries with yourself, even. Number 2 is you self neglect. So you don't do or engage in the self care practices that you know are really good for you. So, number 1, getting really good sleep. That's huge. Not getting the nutrition that you need, not doing exercise every day, not doing the mindful meditation that you need to do in the morning just for yourself. So if you don't set the boundaries in place in order for you to do those things, that's a form of self-neglect. Number 3 is you ignore your emotions. You ignore them to the point where you suppress them, and dismissing your feelings and or the inability to express them to other people, or avoiding, really, let's talk about it. It's really avoidance, right? You avoid talking about them. That could be huge for you, because if you suppress them, if you avoid these feelings, they're going to come out in ways that you probably don't want them to. So if you are having troubles doing that, this could be another sign of having poor boundaries with yourself. If you have uncontrollable self-critical thoughts, so just uncontrollable negative self-talk, I'm horrible, this is like, I can never do anything right, they'll never want to hang out with me, they'll never be with me, they'll abandon me, these types of things, this could definitely be an indication that you're having poor self boundaries. Really, this one is key. Awareness is key, number 1, and then if you can start to change what you're saying to yourself, that's really helpful. Difficulty saying no, that's sign number 5. And this kind of goes with number 1, where you just feel like you're saying yes to everything, and so for that you're overcommitted. So I would say start to have healthy boundaries around saying no would be really helpful. But if you notice you have a hard time saying no, this is an indication you can have poor self boundaries. I have a mentor, shout out to Josh Valentine. He has a saying where he says, if he's invited to something, if someone brings an idea to him, whatever it is, if the initial reaction is not hell yes, then it's a hell no. And I would say for probably the past year and a half, I've been living my life in that way. If it's not an immediate hell yes, it's a hell no. So those are some things or some signs that you could be having some poor self boundaries. I would definitely recommend that jot those down and revisit them and think to yourself, how could you be doing better? And I want to point out another discussion point when we talk about boundaries. I think sometimes people think that they're setting healthy boundaries, but what they're really doing is they're just trying to like control other people. They're trying to control other people's behaviors and what they do. So the question then becomes, are you setting a boundary or are you just trying to control people so that way you feel comfortable? So if you're saying things like, you need to text me back in 2 hours, I don't want to go on vacation with you and your friends. You're not allowed to have any friends that are your exes. You shouldn't be liking your ex's pictures, things like that, right? That's, if you're like saying those things, that seems more like a command and that you're demanding something versus what would be a boundary, right? So a boundary is, if we, okay, so you recognize that your significant other being friends with their ex, maybe it makes you feel anxious or insecure, okay? And you can acknowledge, okay, this is how it's making me feel. And so you can say instead, it's about making decisions for yourself instead of expecting other people to make changes in their behavior. So instead you can say something like, I don't feel comfortable with this particular situation that you have with your ex. And the fact that you want to be friends with them. So if you want to be friends with them, if that's something that's important to you, then this relationship isn't going to work out for me. And so that's basically where your boundary is. Now, it's up to the other person if they want to change their behavior or not. You've just set your boundary. Now, here's the thing, you got to stick to it, because then if they continue to be friends with their ex, you already said that this makes you feel uncomfortable and the relationship isn't going to work for you. So then you have to end the relationship because it's not going to work for you. So a big part of that is recognizing, okay, I'm going to take ownership of what I can do, because that's something that you can do. You can end the relationship because that is a boundary that you have set for yourself, instead of demanding somebody else to do something or demanding a certain action or behavior out of someone. So hopefully that helps with the difference. I know some people struggle with that, and you yourself may be experiencing somebody setting a boundary with you and you're like, why does it feel like they're trying to change my behavior? And just catch how they're talking to you about it, because it could be that they're trying to control your behavior, and it's not that, and that they're not able to set the boundary for themselves, right? And so you can have a conversation around, like, maybe this is a boundary for you. Maybe we should have a conversation around this, if you would like to engage in that conversation. Of course, if you don't want to engage in that conversation, do you, boo? It's totally up to you. All right, so I want to talk about setting healthy boundaries without feeling guilty, because I feel like this is where people get a little bit dicey. So, okay, first of all, let's talk about 8 different types of boundaries. So really quickly, I'm just going to jot them off. You have mental boundaries. So these are boundaries that are involved with protecting your thoughts, your beliefs, your intellectual space. Emotional boundaries. These are boundaries that focus on looking at your feelings and safeguarding your feelings to make sure that you are taking control of your emotional well-being. Then you have physical boundaries. These are about your physical space and your body. And you want to make sure that you feel comfortable in the physical space that you're in and the interactions that you have. Time boundaries. So this involves managing and protecting your time. So you set limits on the commitments that you make, whether it's things to do in your day or if it's time that you're spending with other people and obligations. Social boundaries. These are, I just said, spending time with other people. There are certain relationships that you have. And so maybe the amount of time and energy that you invest in those relationships, you create boundaries around that, how much time and energy you devote there. Digital boundaries. I know I'm going to catch someone with this. They're around how you engage with technology. Again, setting your own time limits on that. Managing your online presence even might be a thing for you. Material boundaries. So this involves protecting your possessions that you have that you're in care of, right? So making sure that you protect those. Sexual boundaries. This is probably the one people thought we were going to talk about first, right? But these are defining your comfort level and your expectations in intimate relationships, doing those types of sexy time things. So those hopefully were helpful, and you were, as you were thinking about all the different boundaries that exist. Those are 8. And then how do you set those boundaries without feeling guilty? I think number one, it's knowing what your needs are. I don't think we spend enough time really sitting down and thinking about what we really need. What I think, because we think if we allow ourselves to think about what we really need, we don't think that the other person can actually give it to us. Who's guilty of that? Totally guilty of that. So I am going to challenge all of us, I'm going to include myself in this, to sit down and think about what you need, even if it seems completely crazy. You don't think anyone can actually provide that need for you. But I think number one, we just got to figure out what that need is and allow ourselves to identify this is a need for me. Understanding why it's need for you is very, very helpful. So if you can tell people what it will do for you in order to have that need met, that is huge, right? I need someone to tell me, Janelle, it's time for you to go to bed. You need to stop watching TV. You need to stop on the computer. You need to stop what you're doing. You need to go to bed now. Why? Because that would help me to know that, okay, you actually care about me, you're thinking about me. So it makes me feel thought of and cared for and loved, while also at the same time helping me maintain my boundaries. That way I can actually go to sleep and get some good rest. So that way I can be better for others and all the people that I need to be good for. So that's me on the fly coming up with a need. And to be honest, I think it's absolutely ludicrous. Yeah, I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I think it's kind of selfish and ludicrous that I would need to tell someone that that's something that I need. I feel embarrassed almost even saying that this is a need for me. And yet, if someone did that for me, it would be amazing. So hopefully that makes sense to somebody. Hopefully my vulnerability helps you guys really navigate for yourselves what some of your needs are and being honest with them. I think being direct after that is really key. This is a boundary for me. So I need to not have any more appointments after 6 p.m. at night, because I need to then have time to wind down, get myself off the screen, get myself off of work mode, so eventually wind down so that way I can go to sleep and have a good night's sleep. And so for that reason, person, client, friend, whoever who wants to talk to me after 6 p.m., I cannot do that. And this is the reason why. Use a lot of I statements when you're stating your boundary and your need. Be really direct. Don't beat around the bush. I think that's probably the number one thing. Nobody likes that, right? People just want to hear things directly. And then I would say take baby steps. Think of the little needs that you need. Think of the little boundaries that you want to set. Start there, something small. I'm talking about like spend a time in the day where I no longer do work or expend energy with others. And so that could be like a small thing. A bigger boundary for you might involve how much time you actually spend with certain members of your family or your friend group that take a lot of energy from you, and having that conversation with them might seem like a really tall ask. And so you can do the little things first, take baby steps. It helps to build your confidence. You're like, oh, I did that one. I did that boundary. I can do this next one. Starting to say no to things, right? If it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. And then face the guilt. Like, so if you are starting to feel guilty around it, and this is very common, people put up the boundary because they haven't set boundaries before, and they feel like, oh, I'm telling this person no, or the other person may feel like I'm pushing them away or something like that. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that you're feeling guilty about it, and just remind yourself why you're setting the boundaries. I can be half of who I am for you right now, or I can be 100% for you right now, but I can't do both. So this is why I need to set this boundary here in order for me to be my best version of myself whenever we are interacting with each other, right? So remind yourself why it's so important. Will help with any guilty feelings that you have that you're being selfish or something like that. Always examine your inner thoughts. Take a look at what you're saying to yourself. That negative self-talk can creep in and just like derail everything. And so think about some of the negative self-talk that you're having, and I would create a new belief around it. Um, the belief that like, oh, I can keep going. I don't need to sleep by the such and such time. The new belief is I do need to sleep because I love myself enough and I love the people around me enough that I'm going to get a really good sleep so I can be really good for them. And I'm going to set that boundary. I'm valuable enough. I'm important enough to do that. I actually have an impact, and the impact is only going to be as great as I can give it with my full energy. So just remind yourself of your value, take the belief and try and turn it on its head. Essentially, this takes time. I want to put that up front. This is not an overnight thing. This takes time. So be gentle with yourself, be forgiving of yourself. It takes time, and it's totally okay. If this has been helpful for you, please let me know in the comments. Let me know too, if you're watching this on the replay, what have been some really difficult boundaries for you to set? I gave you guys an example for me. Hopefully there's something that has come up for you that has been helpful for you. I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, take care, everyone. Bye.